First experiment, MK-Ultra, CIA mind control program. In the early 1950s, during the height of the Cold War, the United States Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, launched a secret program known as MK-Ultra. The main goal of this program was to study methods of mind control, interrogation, and psychological manipulation. At the time, U.S. intelligence agencies believed that rival countries such as the Soviet Union and China were developing similar techniques, which created urgency and justification for these experiments. MK-Ultra officially began in 1953 under the direction of Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist working for the CIA. The program included more than 100 sub-projects, many of which were conducted without the knowledge or consent of the participants. One of the most widely known aspects of MK-Ultra was the use of LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, a powerful hallucinogenic drug. The CIA believed LSD could weaken individuals mentally, making them easier to control or extract information from.
The experiments were conducted in various settings, including universities, hospitals, prisons, and safe houses. In many cases, subjects were not informed that they were part of an experiment. Some individuals were given LSD without their knowledge, including government employees and ordinary citizens. One notable case involved Frank Olson, a U.S. Army scientist who was unknowingly given LSD by CIA officials. Days later, Olson died after falling from a hotel window under unclear circumstances. In addition to drug testing, MK-Ultra included experiments on sensory deprivation, hypnosis, electroshock therapy, and psychological abuse. Some subjects were exposed to extreme stress, isolation, and repeated dosings of drugs over long periods. The purpose was to observe how the human mind could be broken down and controlled. The program remained secret until the 1970s, when investigations by the U.S. Congress and the Rockefeller Commission revealed its existence. However, much of the documentation had already been destroyed on orders from CIA Director Richard Helms in 1973. As a result, the full scope of MK-Ultra is still not completely known today. MK-Ultra is now considered one of the most controversial and unethical programs in U.S. history, raising serious questions about government power, human rights, and scientific responsibility.
Second experiment, Tuskegee Syphilis Study. In 1932, the United States Public Health Service began a long-term medical study in Alabama known as the Tuskegee Syphilis Study. The purpose of this experiment was to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis in African American men. At the time, there was no effective cure for the disease, and researchers wanted to document how it affected the human body over time. The study involved 600 African American men, most of whom were poor sharecroppers. Of these, 399 had syphilis, while 201 did not and were used as a control group. The participants were not told the true purpose of the study. Instead, they were informed that they were receiving treatment for bad blood, a general term used at the time to describe various illnesses. Throughout the study, the men were given free medical exams, meals, and burial insurance. However, they were never properly treated for syphilis, even after penicillin was discovered in the 1940s as an effective cure. Despite this medical breakthrough, researchers deliberately withheld treatment in order to continue observing the disease's long-term effects. The consequences were severe. Many of the participants suffered serious health problems, including blindness, mental illness, and death. In addition, the disease was unknowingly transmitted to their wives, and some children were born with congenital syphilis. The study continued for 40 years until 1972, when it was exposed by a journalist named Jean Heller. Public reaction was immediate and intense. The revelation led to widespread criticism of the U.S. government and medical institutions, as the study clearly violated basic ethical standards, including informed consent and the duty to provide treatment. Following the exposure, the study was officially terminated. In 1974, a class action lawsuit was filed, and a settlement was reached, providing financial compensation to the surviving participants and their families. In 1997, U.S. President Bill Clinton
formally apologized for the study, acknowledging it as a tragic and unethical chapter in American history. The Tuskegee Syphilis Study remains one of the most well-known examples of unethical human experimentation and has had a lasting impact on medical ethics, leading to stricter regulations and the requirement of informed consent in research involving human subjects.
Third experiment, Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, a psychological study known as the Stanford Prison Experiment was conducted at Stanford University by psychologist Philip Zimbardo. The purpose of the experiment was to examine how ordinary people would behave in a simulated prison environment, specifically focusing on the roles of guards and prisoners. Although it was not a traditional government experiment, it was funded in part by the U.S. Office of Naval Research, making it relevant in the context of institutional research. The experiment involved 24 male college students who were selected after psychological screening to ensure they were mentally stable. The participants were randomly assigned roles as either prisoners or guards. A mock prison was created in the basement of Stanford University's psychology building to simulate real prison conditions. The prisoners were unexpectedly arrested at their homes by real police officers, then brought to the mock prison where they were processed, assigned identification numbers, and dressed in prison uniforms. The guards were given uniforms, sunglasses to prevent eye contact, and authority to maintain order, but they were not given specific instructions on how to behave. Within a very short time, the situation escalated.
Guards began to display increasingly aggressive and authoritarian behavior, using psychological tactics such as humiliation, sleep deprivation, and punishment to control the prisoners. The prisoners, in turn, showed signs of extreme stress, anxiety, and emotional breakdown. Some became passive and withdrawn, while others experienced severe psychological distress. The experiment was originally planned to last 2 weeks, but it was terminated after only 6 days due to the intensity of the participants' reactions and the ethical concerns raised by outside observers. One of the key moments leading to its termination was when Christina Maslach, a graduate student, objected to the treatment of the participants, highlighting the lack of ethical safeguards. The Stanford Prison Experiment demonstrated how quickly individuals can adapt to assigned roles and how situational factors can influence behavior. It showed that ordinary people could engage in harmful actions when placed in positions of authority without clear ethical boundaries. The study had a significant impact on psychology and led to major changes in how human experiments are conducted. It contributed to the development of stricter ethical guidelines, including the need for informed consent, the right to withdraw, and oversight by review boards. Despite criticism regarding its methodology, the experiment remains one of the most influential studies in understanding human behavior under authority and institutional control.
Fourth experiment, Operation Midnight Climax. In the 1950s and 1960s, as part of the broader MKUltra program, the CIA conducted a series of secret operations known as Operation Midnight Climax. The goal of this project was to study human behavior under the influence of drugs, particularly LSD, and to explore how individuals could be manipulated, controlled, or coerced in vulnerable situations. The operation was primarily carried out in cities such as San Francisco and New York. The CIA set up a number of safe houses that were disguised as ordinary apartments or brothels. These locations were equipped with hidden surveillance systems, including one-way mirrors, microphones, and recording devices. The CIA recruited sex workers to participate in the operation. Their role was to lure unsuspecting men to these safe houses. Once inside, the men were secretly given LSD or other substances without their knowledge or consent. While under the influence of these drugs, their behavior was closely observed and recorded by CIA agents watching from behind one-way mirrors. The purpose of these experiments was to determine how drugs could affect decision-making, suggestibility, and the ability to extract information from individuals. Researchers were particularly interested in whether such methods could be used during interrogations or intelligence operations.
Participants were not informed that they were part of an experiment, nor were they given any opportunity to consent. Many of them were ordinary citizens who had no connection to intelligence work. The long-term effects on these individuals were never fully documented, as the program operated in complete secrecy. George Hunter White, a federal narcotics agent working with the CIA, played a central role in Operation Midnight Climax. He managed several of the safe houses and personally observed many of the experiments. Records indicate that he viewed the operation as both a scientific project and a form of entertainment, raising further ethical concerns. Like other MK-Ultra-related activities, Operation Midnight Climax remained hidden until the 1970s, when government investigations began uncovering details about secret CIA programs. However, many records had already been destroyed, limiting the full understanding of the operation's scope. This experiment highlighted serious ethical violations, including the use of non-consensual drug administration, surveillance without knowledge, and exploitation of individuals in controlled environments. It remains one of the most controversial examples of covert human experimentation conducted by a government agency.
Fifth experiment, Unit 731, Imperial Japan Human Experiments. During the 1930s and World War II, the Imperial Japanese Army operated a secret research unit known as Unit 731. This facility was located in occupied China, near the city of Harbin. The unit was led by General Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist and army officer who was responsible for developing biological and chemical weapons. The primary goal of Unit 731 was to study the effects of diseases and weapons on human bodies. To achieve this, the unit conducted experiments on thousands of prisoners, including Chinese civilians, prisoners of war, and individuals from other occupied territories. These subjects were referred to as logs by the researchers, reflecting the dehumanizing nature of the program. The experiments included exposing individuals to deadly pathogens such as plague, cholera, and anthrax. In many cases, subjects were intentionally infected in order to observe how the diseases developed and spread within the human body. Some experiments involved testing frostbite by exposing limbs to extreme cold and then studying tissue damage. Unit 731 also conducted vivisection, which is the practice of performing surgical procedures on living subjects without anesthesia. This was done to observe internal organ damage in real time. Additionally, weapons testing was carried out on human subjects, including the use of grenades, flamethrowers, and other military equipment.
The data collected from these experiments was intended to support the development of biological weapons. There is evidence that some of these weapons were tested in the field, leading to outbreaks of disease among civilian populations. At the end of World War II, many members of Unit 731 were not prosecuted for war crimes. Instead, the United States granted immunity to several key scientists, including Shiro Ishii, in exchange for the research data collected during the experiments. This decision has been widely criticized by historians and ethicists. The full scale of Unit 731's activities remained largely hidden for decades. Only later did documents and testimonies reveal the extent of the experiments conducted. Today, Unit 731 is recognized as one of the most extreme and unethical examples of human experimentation in history. It played a significant role in shaping international laws and ethical standards regarding biological research and the treatment of human subjects.